Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to go through some recommendations for great silent horror films. I've got 5 of them here, so effectively my top 5 favourite silent horror movies. I know this is a bit of an acquired subgenre, but I've got 5 movies here that I thought were really enjoyable and very accessible. And most of these movies here are now at least 100 years old, which is fascinating in and of itself. So I'll get straight into it. So at number 5, from 1922, we have Hexham, which is a really fascinating film. It takes like a documentary style, almost like a dissertational look at witchcraft and dark arts throughout the centuries, and it sort of recreates scenes of like witchcraft and sort of haggard witches around like making potions and stood around boiling pots and like the proper traditional sort of look of witches. And it kind of looks at how that was seen and dealt with throughout the centuries, sort of from looking at it from a genuine point of view that they have dark ways and dark powers about them, to kind of rudimental early mental illness kind of approach. Really fascinating stuff. And for sort of a silent documentary film from the 20s, it's surprisingly entertaining. It's fast paced, it keeps you engaged, has a little bit of dark humour in it as well. So really fascinating piece of work, and one that I was surprised by how much I liked it, and how it kept things interesting, and the way it moved along at a good pace. And because of the kind of ancient look of this one, the scenes of kind of the witches and all the gothic horror are just wonderful. It really plunges you into like that real kind of oldie fashioned gothic world. So yeah, Hexham, definitely a film that I can recommend checking out. It's an interesting one. So that's that one. Okay, next up from 1921, so I think this is the second oldest movie I have in the collection. We have The Phantom Carriage, which is kind of like a gothic horror fairy tale from Sweden, I believe. And it's based on this kind of folklore that the last person to die on New Year's Eve will take up the reins of riding like the Grim Reaper's horse and car, and will collect souls for the next year, which is apparently something you don't want to do. It's quite a burdensome role. And it just kind of explores that, and it's a wonderful film. It took me a while to kind of get into it, sort of get into the cultural climate of this one. Like I say, it's a 1920s silent movie from Sweden, but once I got a handle on what was going on and kind of the feel of the film, I really got into it and I enjoyed it. And the images in this of the kind of hooded Grim Reaper riding its cart through the dark gothic countryside from a 1921 lens is amazing. It's got some beautiful scenery and looks in this one. It just looks absolutely wonderful. One of those films where, again, like Hexham, the ancientness of this one just adds to the look and feel and just the gloomy gothicness of what this one is. But another wonderful film. I really like sort of the fairy tale-y aspect to it as well, and the way that meets sort of really old gothic horror. So yeah, I can definitely recommend The Phantom Carriage. It's a good film. Next up from 1922, and this will be the most sort of famous and I think popular one on the list, but for me it's at number 3. We have the original Nosferatu, with Max Schreck playing Count Orloff. So I'm sure you all know this one. This is essentially Dracula. It's the Dracula story made by German filmmakers, as I say, with Max Schreck playing the Count. And a really wonderful film, absolutely iconic now. Probably the the first iconic horror film, I would say. I can't think of one that came before Nosferatu that is still iconic now. I think after this you had like the Universal Monsters, and you can kind of track it from there. But yeah, Nosferatu was, I think, the first iconic character, and I still see him popping up in popular culture now, in cartoons and things like that. And I love how they use the light and shadows in this film. So the scene with the Count's hand creeping up the staircase, and with his silhouetted hand going over the woman's chest. Really, really beautiful cinematography in this. It's very arty and really well done. And of course, Count Orlok looks really creepy, even to this day. He's got a very unsettling look about him. And when you sort of see him rise up from the coffin and his long fingers, yeah, really, really good. So, yeah, I think even if you don't like the notion of really old silent films, you should definitely check out Nosferatu, because it is a great film, and like I say, it's so iconic. I think it's very important to the horror genre, and one of the founding pillars, if you will, to iconic horror cinema. So yeah, that's Nosferatu. Next up at number 2, this is from 1920, which makes this officially the oldest film in my collection, and that is The Golem. A German film, and a film that is said to have kind of sort of be a precursor to Frankenstein. So this is set in this little German village. They are under tyranny from, I think it's Rudolf II, and this kind of peaceful rabbi, he creates this big golem monster creature to kind of help keep order and keep peace and just look after him. But it gets into the wrong hands. It gets into the hands of this kind of greedy, sort of not very moral person, and there proceeds to become more of a monster and a bit of a tyrant in itself. It's an absolutely wonderful film, beautiful movie. It looks great on Blu-ray. Again, it adds a bit of fairy tale to gothic horror, and just tells a really good story of kind of the effects of like war and peace on this little village and the moral aspects and that kind of thing. It's a really, really, really good film. And the Golem character is awesome as well. I absolutely love this film. It's fantastic. Don't let the fact that it's like a silent movie put you off. I think you should really check this one out. It's a wonderful film. So that's The Golem. And at number 1 is a film that I only saw maybe a couple of years ago and just absolutely adored every moment of it. From 1928, this is The Man Who Laughs, with Conrad Veidt as this guy. He has an accident when he's born, and it results in him having this permanent garish grin on his face. So everyone thinks he's having a great time, but he's quite a tortured character, and he wears a mask to cover up. And he works in a circus and has a pretty okay life, but he finds out he's like the heir to the throne, like the king of this place. So of course that kind of brings him more out into the light, into society, and that's not really what you want when in these olden times, when you have this facial thing going off. So he comes across a number of people that don't like him and persecute him, and it's kind of about his struggles as he gets through the film. But it's absolutely wonderful. It's beautiful, amazing performance from Conrad Veidt to get across all these emotions under this heavy, creepy makeup. It's got a really, really good ending, which I won't give away. But the film didn't go where I thought it would, and it didn't end how I thought it would, but it's absolutely wonderful. It's such a fantastic film. I highly recommend checking out The Man Who Laughs. I think it's the best example of silent horror. It's just done remarkably well and is a joy to watch. So that's 5 what I think are great silent horror films. Let me know if you've seen any of these and what you think of them. I'd be really interested, and let me know if there's any that you would recommend yourself, and I'll certainly check them out.